Red Faith 48, August 18th, 2025. Episode 4, Chapters 2 and 3. Following graduation and From Ocean to Ocean. Intro. Hello, social media mites and mavens. This is James Hohman. I should have included in the prior audio cast before the first chapter of my memoir, Out Here in the Stars, a memoir of love, loss, and learning to let go, that this book is dedicated to Harold Shepard's beloved goddaughter, Ms. Lily Sakharov, as well as his godmother and aunt, Ms. Billy Satinspiel Toplansky, who gloriously celebrated her 100th birthday last month, surrounded by just about all of her extensive and loving family. This audio cast will tell of my search for a career from coast to coast, beginning in June 1966 and through to early 1971. The country was deeply involved in an undeclared war. My generation responded with demonstrations across the country, which became dangerous confrontations in 1971. The times were not exactly the most stable part of U.S. history, but that instability was possibly the only dynamic that was consistent with my personal journey. It was my introduction to, quote, the myths of America, for which I've always imagined a pageant of some kind, complete with the crowning of the most ironic absurdity. Should you be interested in contacting me, please click on the website image, www.jlhoman.com, located on your screen, and thank you for your time and consideration. Episode 4, Following Graduation, From Ocean to Ocean. 3 days after our high school graduation, I moved into my grandmother's attic. It was only 3 blocks from my parents' home, but in my mental health, it was a universal way. 3 months later, I hitchhiked to Madison, Wisconsin with a $1,000 Kiwanis scholarship to attend the state university. You'd think our parents would have been proud, but if they were, they never expressed it. Mom had a high school diploma, but Dad dropped out of school after 8th grade. Neither of them attended our high school graduation, nor ever congratulated me on being awarded a scholarship. My father's response to my plan to attend university that September was simply, well, you'll do so without any help from us, unquote. Regardless, I was determined to become the first person in either parent's family to obtain a college degree. In June of 1966, President Johnson escalated the war in Vietnam. Furthering one's education was another way to avoid being drafted. Just saying. I was feeling totally lost and facing my future without any parental support, guidance, or even interest. What future? I decided that a Vietnam jungle killing field was not an option. Therefore, getting an education seemed to be the only viable alternative. Like most of my flower children generation, I was lost, totally adrift. Getting lost on the campus of the University of Wisconsin in Madison for the next 4 years was relatively easy to do. Didn't most students, in fact, go to college to, quote, get lost, unquote? It was groovy, man. And almost everyone found sex, drugs, and rock and roll while trying to find themselves as they stumbled through their own private purple haze. Having to work full time at the university hospital to pay for my education while getting to pay for my education, I probably didn't get as lost with or found as many diversions as other students. I did my best. In those days, I hitchhiked everywhere, which expanded my sexual education. Giving blowjobs to truck drivers on US I-94 was particularly interesting, if more than mildly confusing. And lucrative. But weren't these men supposed to be straight? However, it did save me money, becoming not only a mode of transportation, but also a source of income and an exercise in my burgeoning sexuality. Sleeping with veterans recently returned from Vietnam who were only slightly older than I and using the GI Bill to finance their education was probably the riskiest of my experiences. One blonde, beautifully buffed, bearded young man lying next to me woke up in the middle of the night and started attacking me, thinking he was back in a Vietnamese rice paddy. I mean, who had read anything about PTSD in the mid 1960s? WCR, that's what we called him, died in 1981. Why were so many of these seemingly straight men into, if not experimenting with, gay sex? I began to realize that most men were lost. The concept of adult seemed to mean that eventually those lost men would find something or someone. I guessed that we were all looking. The first semester of my senior year ended with the first U.S. conscription lottery on December 1st, 1969. My three roommates and I went out to drink, every undergraduate's first choice, and testing his luck. The four women at the end of our hall stayed home to listen to the radio broadcast and tabulate all the birth dates in order. The next day, with splitting headaches, we absorbed our aspirin, along with the reality of our numbers being 17, 27, 54, and mine, 346. While my twin brother had enlisted in the U.S. Navy only 4 months before, I would never be drafted. However, after college graduation, one relentless question nagged me daily. What was it that I wanted to do with my life? The former director of Kenosha Civic Theater, who had been employed for 5 consecutive seasons there, was now living in Los Angeles. He wrote to me with an invitation. I'm planning a film. I'm producing a film and wondered, now that you're out of college, if you might be interested in working on the crew. I'd be happy to assist you in a move to the left coast if that would interest you. His letter seemed to be a godsend, a future, working on a film. The only possible means of getting there was, of course, hitchhiking. Dancing and singing in civic theater productions that he had directed had brought me more joy than anything I'd experienced in life. In 1970, with the unemployment rate being almost 14%, and with hair to the middle of my back plus my first mustache, I made the decision to continue my hitchhiking adventures, first to Los Angeles for the film offer, and then to Miami Beach to visit a dance partner who had become a Playboy bunny. I thought there had to be opportunities for a dancer singer in either location. After 3 hours on the road outside of Madison, Wisconsin, I was picked up by members of the Kentucky Fried Theater Company who were relocating from Madison to West Pico Boulevard in LA. Along with one of the company's actresses, named Lisa, I took turns driving this dilapidated bakery van to Tinseltown, while the others did mild drugs and slept all day in the back. Driving west on I-80 through the flats of Nebraska with the sun rising in the side view mirrors, I gasped, "Lisa, look, look!" I had to wake her. "Can you believe that vista? My God, it's a phrase we had to sing every morning of elementary school, and there it is. Purple Mountain's majesty. Amazing." Being mildly stoned from breathing secondhand smoke only added to my appreciation. Once we arrived, amid more sunshine and palm trees than I'd ever seen, I knocked on the door of the address my film friend had sent to me. His home was off Franklin Avenue at the foot of the Hollywood Hills. The late morning sun lit my unannounced arrival from behind. I was exhausted, anxious, and wondering what adventures lay behind that door. It opened. Hi, wow, you look better than I remember, he said after opening his front door. Come on in, he said, greeting me with a big hug. I stammered exhaustingly. I probably should have called earlier to give you a heads up. I hitched here with a theater company moving to LA from Madison, and we couldn't find a phone to use. My apologies. I'm here to work on your film. Now, why was he wearing a wig? Oh, that film had to be postponed because some of the money fell through, Mr. Producer explained almost immediately. But please don't worry. We will have a wonderful time acclimating you to LA. I think Rock and Tom will love you and your story. I'm so glad you're here. I can't believe it. Oh, hey, Jocko here was about to leave, he explained as a young man completed dressing himself while stumbling through the living room and out the front door with an exchange of exceptionally quick goodbyes. I quickly realized that being a houseboy wasn't any part of the loss I wanted to experience. The next day, greatly disappointed after one night in the Hollywood Hills with my host, who had changed so much since I'd known him as a director of Civic Theater, I took a cab to the San Bernardino airport and for only $15 flew to San Francisco, where life, well, at least pictured in the magazines of the day, had to be better. This was 1970, and although I knew nobody in the city by the bay, it was certainly beautiful. I found that the flower children subculture of Haight Ashbury seemed all that San Francisco had to offer in terms of culture, and even that seemed to be waning. Nothing was older than 1906. I was disenchanted, but loved the weather and couldn't afford to get back to Wisconsin. I phoned my aunt and uncle, who were living in Glendora, California. They had 9 children and welcomed me as an au pair of sorts for the summer. Between chauffeuring my 4 youngest cousins to and from school and their tennis, swimming, and music lessons, I finished reading Carl Rogers' On Becoming a Person in my relative's magnificent tropical garden where I first witnessed hummingbirds. It was there also I decided that if I wanted to dance, I would be better off back east. Visiting the UCLA campus, I read a notice on a bulletin board that a college professor was looking for people to drive back to the Midwest with him, so I called. He was driving to Toronto and he said he could drop me in Minneapolis. Because I was the smaller of his 2 passengers, I was perched horizontally atop the many file boxes in the back of his station wagon. With my nose inches away from the top of his vehicle, I endured the tight quarters along with car fumes for about 3 days. I never helped drive and could barely stand up when he unloaded me in Minnesota. After hitching back now to Madison and crashing with a friend, I got a seasonal job personalizing Christmas cards for the holiday season at Manchester's department store. My very first job with a degree. Georgia, the assistant buyer for the department, and I both fell in love with our boss, Tim Fenner, who looked like he'd stepped off a rock and roll album cover. While neither she nor I had our libidos assuaged, that I know of, I did manage to get hired full time. A second imprinter was then hired. Her name was Chris, and she claimed that the home she rented with her boyfriend was being taped by a federal government agency for drugs. Her paranoia was surprisingly compatible with my loosely wrapped conception of a future. This freedom phase was memorable. Following a party I don't remember clearly at all, I awoke in the wee morning hours wearing only my hippie beads and a white fur coat. my first blackout. Also, I found the local civic theater group and was cast as a dancer in their production of Camelot. While still feeling lost and out of place in the Midwest, I looked to the east. I had now seen the Pacific Ocean. Why not see the Atlantic? 1 year later, still working at Manchester's department store in Madison, I had saved enough money to buy a one-way bus ticket to Miami Beach, Florida. A former dance partner from Kenosha had recently moved to the Sunshine State for employment at Hugh Hefner's recently purchased Fontainebleau, his second Playboy resort. It was 1971, and everyone advised me not to hitch south of the Mason-Dixon line with my long hair. I looked like Bobby Sherman. After a 3-day bus ride from Chicago, I arrived in Miami Beach, physically numb. Almost immediately, I found a job as a lifeguard/pool attendant and rented the sofa in a bungalow with 3 Playboy bunnies in what is now South Beach. I had done civic theater with Bunny Helene, who said she and her roommates would welcome a fourth for financial reasons. The bunnies and I would sit on their porch across from the Hotel El Dorado on Collins Avenue, smoke grass, and dream of what we could do with that gorgeous Art Deco structure if we only had the money. Boy, those 3 women taught me more about makeup than I had ever learned in any theater class. My twin brother, Joey, was then stationed with the U.S. Navy in Jacksonville, Florida, and made an unannounced decision to visit me. "You are living every American male's fantasy, dude. Living with not 1 but 3 Playboy bunnies. I can't believe it." Joey was agog. "Joey, I work all day and they work all night. We never see each other. I'm lucky they have this sofa that I can rent," I assured him. "I'm not sleeping with any of them, you know." I hesitated. "I'm into men, Joey, not girls." Well, that honest admission abruptly shortened his stay. While I knew he couldn't wait to share this experience with his Navy buddies, I doubted that details of his gay twin would be included. Little did I care. I was about to audition for the biggest opportunity of my life. Disney was hiring for its newest Florida theme park. Disney World was scheduled to open near Orlando. I arranged an audition with the Disney company, took a bus to Orlando, and found the address of what looked like a Quonset hut situated alongside an enormous construction site. The receptionist who greeted me honestly looked exactly like Snow White. Following the audition, I was offered a job as a kid from the kingdom. Sadly, though, that offer was rescinded when I admitted that I was not yet a legal resident of the state of Florida, which would have taken 6 years. Back at the beach, Bunny Helene told me of a wonderful jazz dance studio located in Evanston, Illinois, and run by the renowned choreographer and teacher/author Gus Giordano. I flew back to O'Hare that September. And after only 3 weeks of classes, Gus noticed me, liked what he saw in class, and asked if I'd become an apprentice to his dance company. I enthusiastically responded, "Yes, Mr. Giordano, yes," and was given free classes in jazz, tap, and ballet. And that concludes this podcast. Please check in next week for episode 5, which first tells about my aha moment and dancing with the International Gus Giordano Jazz Dance Company. Then getting my Actors Equity Association, or AEA card, which made me a member of one of the largest of 5 performing unions, in which it was estimated that only 3 to 5% of its membership ever worked at one time. Imagine my delight. Thank you for your time and consideration. Again, thanks for listening. Until next week, then, be kind, do good, be happy, and love one another, remembering to coexist with tolerance by embracing similarities and respecting differences. Thank you.